Yeah, let's offer our prayers together. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschyata Desha Tarine.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Sadhisi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare
Hare Rama Rama Rama
Hare Hare. I welcome everyone for reading of program of Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. And yes, so everybody can see the screen, right? We'll be beginning. We had the introduction yesterday, and we'll begin the chapter 1. Chapter 1, the childhood. We would be sleeping and father would be doing arti. Ding, ding, ding. We would hear the bell and wake up and see him bowing down before Krishna, Srila Prabhupada. It was Janmashtami, the annual celebration of the advent of Lord Krishna, some 5,000 years before. Residents of Calcutta, mostly Bengalis and other Indians, but also many Muslims and even some British were observing the festive day, moving here and there through the city streets to visit the temples of Lord Krishna. Devout Vaishnavas fasting until midnight chanted Hare Krishna and heard about the birth and activities of Lord Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam. They continued fasting, chanting, and worshipping throughout the night. The next day, September 1st, 1896, in a little house in the Tollygunge suburb of Calcutta, a male child was born. Since he was born on Nandochav, the day Krishna's father, Nanda Maharaj, had observed a festival in honor of Krishna's birth, the boy's uncle called him Nandulal. But his father, Gaur Mahande, and his mother, Rajani, named him Abhay Charan, one who is fearless, having taken shelter at Lord Krishna's lotus feet. In accordance with Bengali tradition, the mother had gone to the home of her parents for the delivery. And so it was that on the bank of the Adi Ganga, a few miles from his father's home, in a small two-room mud-walled house with a tiled roof underneath a jackfruit tree, Avacharan was born. A few days later, Ava returned with his parents to their home at 151 Harrison Road.
An astrologer did a horoscope for the child, and the family was made jubilant by the auspicious reading. The astrologer made a specific prediction. When this child reached the age of 70, he would cross the ocean, become a great exponent of religion, and open 108 temples. Abhay Charan De was born into an Indian dominated by Victorian imperialism. Calcutta was the capital of India, the seat of the Viceroy, the Earl of Elgin and Kincardine, and the second city of the British Empire. Europeans and Indians lived separately, although in business and education they intermingled. The British lived mostly in central Calcutta, amidst their own theaters, racetracks, cricket fields, and fine European buildings. The Indians lived more in North Calcutta. Here the men dressed in dhotis and the women in saris, and while remaining loyal to the British crown, followed the traditional religion and culture.
Loud.
Abhay's home at 151 Harrison Road was in the Indian section of North Calcutta. Abhay's father, Gaur Mohan De, was a cloth merchant of moderate income and belonged to the aristocratic Suvarnavanik merchant community. He was related, however, to the wealthy Mulik family, which for hundreds of years had traded in gold and salt with the British. Originally, the Muliks had been member of the De family, a Gotra lineage that tracks back to the ancient sage Gautama. But during the Mughal period of pre-British India, a Muslim ruler had
Conferred.
conferred the title Mulik, Lord, on a wealthy, influential branch of the Des. Then, several generations later, a daughter of the Des had married into the Mulik family, and the two families had remained close ever since.
One more.
An entire block of properties on either side of Harishan Road belongs to Lokanath Mulik and Gaur Mohan, and his family lived in a few rooms of a three-story building within the Mulik properties. Across the street from the Des residence was a Radha Govind temple, where for the past 150 years the Muliks had maintained worship of the deity of Radha and Krishna. Various shops on the Mulik properties provided income for the deity and for the priests conducting the worship. Every morning before breakfast, the Mulik family members would visit the temple to see the deity of Radha Govinda. They would offer cooked rice, kachoris, and vegetables on a large platter and would then distribute the prasadam to the deities. Morning visitors from the neighborhood.
Ajay, please.
Among the daily visitors was Abhay Charan, accompanying his mother, father, or servant. Srila Prabhupada. I used to ride on the same perambulator with Siddhavarsa Mullik. He used to call me Moti or Pearl, and his nickname was Subhuti. And the servant pushed us together. If one day this friend did not see me, he would become mad. He would not go into the perambulator without me. He would not separate even for a moment. As the servant pushed the baby carriage into the wide expanse of Harrison Road, timing his crossing between the bicycles and horse-drawn hackneys, the two children in the pram gazed up at the fair sky and tall trees across the road. Sounds and sights of the hackneys with their large wheels spinning over the road caught the fascinated attention of the two children. The servant steered the carriage towards the arched gateway within the red sandstone wall bordering the Radha Govinda Mandira, and as Abhay and his friend rode underneath the ornate metal arch and into the courtyard, they saw high above them two stone lions, the heralds and protectors of the temple compound, their right paws extended.
Can you explain this section? Ajay?
Yeah, so I guess it sounds like, so every day they would go to the temple as a child, and they were pushed in essentially a baby carriage, a pram. And as they go, it sounds like it's just kind of setting the scene of what they saw, just kind of the busyness of Calcutta, and just kind of giving you a good idea of what I guess, right, of what Calcutta
Environment.
was at that time. Yeah.
Very nice. Babita, you can read 2 paragraphs.
In the courtyard was a circular drive, and on the oval lawn were lampposts with gaslights and a statue of a young woman in robes. Sharply chirping sparrows flitted in the shrubs and trees or hopped across the grass, pausing to peck the ground, while choruses of pigeons cooed, sometimes abruptly flapping their wings overhead, sailing off to another perch, or descending to the courtyard. Voices chattered as Bengalis moved to and fro, dressed in simple cotton saris and white dhotis. Someone paused by the carriage to amuse the golden-skinned boys with their shining dark eyes, but mostly people were passing by quickly, going into the temple. The heavy double doors leading into the inner courtyard were open, and the servant eased the carriage wheels down a foot-deep step and proceeded through the foyer, then down another step and into the bright sunlight of the main courtyard. There they faced a stone statue of Garuda, perched on a 4-foot column. This carrier of Vishnu, Garuda, half man and half bird, kneeled on one knee, his hands folded prayerfully, his eagle's beak strong, and his wings poised behind him. The carriage moved ahead past 2 servants sweeping and washing the stone courtyard. It was just a few paces across the courtyard to the temple.
Yes, thank you. So Prabhupada is narrating. Pranath Prabhu, you can read. After that, Mataji.
The temple area itself, open like a pavilion, was a raised platform with a stone roof supported by stout pillars 15 feet tall. At the end of the temple pavilion stood a crowd of worshippers viewing the deities on the altar. The servant pushed the carriage closer, lifted the two boys out, and then, holding their hands, escorted them reverentially before the deities. Srila Prabhupada, I can remember standing at the doorway of Radha Govind temple saying prayers to Radha Govinda Murti. I would watch for hours together. The deity was so beautiful with his slanted eyes. Radha and Govinda, freshly bathed and dressed, now stood on their silver throne amidst vases of fragrant flowers. Govinda was about 18 inches high, and Radharani, standing to his left, was slightly smaller. Both were golden. Radha and Govinda both stood in the same gracefully curved dancing pose, right leg bent at the knee and right foot placed in front of the left. Radharani, dressed in a lustrous silk sari, held up her reddish right palm in benediction, and Krishna, in his silk jacket and dhoti, played on a golden flute.
Thank you. Mataji, you can read 2 paragraphs.
Okay. At Govinda's lotus feet were green tulsi leaves with pulp of sandalwood hanging around their lordships' necks, and reaching down almost to their lotus feet were several garlands of fragrant night blooming jasmine, delicate trumpet like blossoms resting lightly on Radha and Govinda's divine forms. Their necklaces of gold, pearls, and diamonds shimmered. Radharani's bracelets were of gold, and both she and Krishna wore gold embroidered silk chadras about their shoulders. The flowers in their hands and the hair were small and delicate, and the silver crowns on their heads were decked with jewels. Radha and Krishna were slightly smiling, beautifully dressed, dancing on their silver throne beneath a silver canopy and surrounded by flowers. To Abhay, they appeared most attractive. Life outside, on Harrison Road and beyond, was forgotten. In the country yard, the birds went on chirping, and visitors came and went. But Abhay stood silently absorbed in seeing the beautiful forms of Krishna and Radharani, the Supreme Lord and his eternal consort.
Thank you. Prasanthi?
Then the Kirtana began, devotees chanting and playing on drums and kartals. Abhay and his friend kept watching as the pujaris offered incense, its curling smoke hanging in the air, then a flaming lamp, a conch shell, a handkerchief, flowers, a whisk, and a peacock fan. Finally, the pujari blew the conch shell loudly, and the aarti ceremony was over. When Abhay was 1.5 years old, he fell ill with typhoid. The family physician, Dr. Bose, prescribed chicken broth. No, Gaur Mohan protested. I cannot allow it. Yes, otherwise he will die. But we are not meat eaters, Gaur Mohan pleaded. We cannot prepare chicken in our kitchen. Don't mind, Dr. Bose said. I shall prepare it at my house and bring it in a jar, and you simply. Gaur Mohan assented. If it is necessary for my son to live. So the doctor came with his chicken broth and offered it to Abhay, who immediately began to vomit. Should I continue, Prabhuji? Should
Yeah,
I continue?
one more prayer.
All right, the doctor admitted. Never mind, this is no good. Gaur Mohan then threw the chicken broth away, and Abhay gradually recovered from the typhoid without having to eat meat.
Thank you. Nikunj Gopal Mataji. Nikunj Gopal Mataji.
On the roof of Abai's maternal grandmother's house was a little garden with flowers, greenery, and trees. Along with the other grandchildren, 2-year-old Abai took pleasure in wearing the plants with a sprinkling can, but particularly his particular tendency was to sit alone among the plants. He would find a nice bush and make a sitting place. One day, when Abhay was 3, he narrowly escaped a fatal burning. He was playing with matches in front of his house when he caught his cloth on fire. Suddenly, a man appeared and put the fire out. Abhay was saved, although he retained a small scar on his leg. In 1900, when Abhay was 4, a vehement plague hit Calcutta. Dozens of people died every day, and thousands evacuated the city. When there seemed no way to check the plague, an old Babaji organized Hare Krishna Sankirtana all over Calcutta. Regardless of religion, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, and Parsi all joined, and a large party of chanters traveled from street to street, door to door, chanting the names Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The group arrived at Gaur Mohan's house at 151 Harrison Road, and Gaur Mohan eagerly received them. Although Abhay was a little child, his head reaching only up to the knees of the chanters, he also joined the dancing. Shortly after this, the plague subsided.
Very well. Ram Prabhu, you can read.
Gaurmohan was a pure Vaishnava and he raised his son to be Krishna conscious. Since his own parents had also been Vaishnavas, Gauramohan had never touched meat, fish, egg, tea, or coffee. His complexion was fair and his disposition reserved. At night, he would lock up his cloth shop, set a bowl of rice in the middle of the floor to satisfy the rats so that they would not chew the cloth in their hunger, and return home. There he would read from Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the main scriptures of Bengali Vaishnavas, chant on his japa beads, and worship the deity of Lord Krishna. He was gentle and affectionate and would never punish Abhay. Even when obliged to correct him, Gaur Mohan would first apologize. You are my son, so now I must correct you. It is my duty. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father would chastise him, so don't mind. Srila Prabhupada, my father's income was no more than 250 rupees, but there was no question of need. In the mango season, when we were children, we would run through the house playing, and we would grab mangoes as we were running through. And all through the day, we would eat mangoes. We would not have to think, can I have a mango? My father always provided food. Mangoes were 1 rupee a dozen.
Life was simple, but there was always plenty. We were middle class, but receiving 4 or 5 guests daily. My father gave 4 daughters in marriage, and there was no difficulty for him. Maybe it was not a very luxurious life, but there was no scarcity of food or shelter or cloth. Daily he purchased 2.5 kilograms of milk. He did not like to purchase retail, but would purchase a year's supply of coal by the cartload. We were happy. Not that because we did not purchase a motor car, we were unhappy. My father used to say, God has 10 hands. If he wants to take away from you with 2 hands, how much can you protect? And when he wants to give to you with 10 hands, then with your 2 hands, how much can you take? Continue, Prabhu.
Mataji can read. Yeah.
My father would rise a little late, around 7 or 8. Then, after taking bath, he would go purchasing. Then, from 10 o'clock to 1 in the afternoon, he was engaged in puja. Then, he would take his lunch and go to business. And in the business shop, he would take a little rest for 1 hour. He would come home from business at 10 o'clock at night. And then again he would do puja. Actually, his real business was puja. For livelihood, he did some business, but puja was his main business. He would be sleeping, and father would be doing aarti. Ding, ding, ding. We would hear the bell and wake up and see him going down before Krishna. Gaur Mohan wanted Vaishnava goals for his son. He wanted Abhay to become a servant of Radharani, to become a preacher of the Bhagavatam, and to learn the devotional art of playing mridanga. He regularly received sadhus in his home, and he would always ask them, "Please bless my son, so that Srimati Radharani may be pleased with him and grant him her blessings."
Thank you.
Enjoying each other's company, father and son used to walk as far as 10 miles, saving the 5 paisa tram fare. On the beach, they used to see a yogi who for years had sat in one spot without moving. One day, the yogi's son was sitting there, and people had gathered around. The son was taking over his father's sitting place. Gaur Mohan gave the yogis a donation and asked for their blessings for his son. When Abhay's mother said she wanted him to become a British lawyer when he grew up, which meant he would have to go to London to study, one of the Mulik uncles thought it was a good idea, but Gaur Mohan would not hear of it. If Abhay went to England, he would be influenced by European dress and manners. He would learn drinking and woman hunting. Gaur Mohan objected. I do not want his money.
Yes. Swati Mataji, please.
From the beginning of Abhay's life, Gauramohan had introduced his plans. He had hired a professional mridanga player to teach Abhay the standard rhythms for accompanying kirtan. Rajani had been spectacle. What is the purpose of teaching such a young child to play the mridanga? It is not important, but Gauramohan had his dreams of son who would grow up singing bhajans, playing mridang, and speaking on Srimad Bhagavatam. When Abhay sat to play the mridanga, even with his left and right arm extended as far as he could, his small hands would barely reach the drumhead at the opposite end of the drum. With his right wrist, he would crinkle his hands just as his teacher instructed, and his fingers would make a high pitched sound, teeny, teeny, ta, twa. And then he would strike the left drum head with his open left hand, boom, boom. With practice and age, he was gradually learning the basic rhythm, and Gauramohan looked on with pleasure.
Vijayanand Prabhu.
Abhay was an acknowledged pet child of both his parents. In addition to his childhood names, Moti, Nandulal, Nandu, and Kocha, his grandmother called him Kachori Mukhi because of his fondness for kachoris, spicy vegetable stuffed fried pastries popular in Bengal. Both his grandmother and mother would give him kachoris, which he kept in the many pockets of his little waist. He liked to watch the vendors cooking on the busy roadside and accept kachoris from them and from the neighbors until all the inside and outside pockets of his vest were filled. Sometimes, when Abe demanded that his mother make him kachoris, she would refuse. Once, she even sent him to bed. When Gaur Mohan came home and asked, "Where is Abe?" Rajani explained how he had been too demanding and she had sent him to bed without kachoris. "No, we should make them for him," his father replied. And he woke up Abe and personally cooked puris and kachoris for him. Gaur Mohan was always lenient with Abe and careful to see that his son got whatever he wanted. When Gaur Mohan returned home at night, it was his practice to take a little puffed rice, and Abe would also sometimes sit with his father eating puffed rice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very nice. Hope everyone doing well. I think going good speed. Once, at a cost of 6 rupees, Gorman bought away a pair of shoes imported from England. That time 6 rupees is a very big price. And each year, through a friend who traveled back and forth from Kashmir, Gorman would present his son a Kashmiri shawl with a fancy hand-sewn border. One day in the market, Ave saw a toy gun he wanted. His father said no, and Ave started to cry. All right, Gorman said, and he bought the gun. Then Ave wanted another gun. You already have one, his father said. Why do you want another one? One for each hand, Ave cried. And he lay down in the street, kicking his feet. When Gorman agreed to get the second gun, Ave was specified. Ave's mother, Rajani, was 30 years old when he was born. Like her husband, she came from a long-established Gaudiya Vaishnava family. She was darker skinned than her husband, and whereas his disposition was cool, hers tended to be fiery. Ave saw his mother and father living together peacefully. No deep marital conflict or complicated dissatisfaction ever threatened home. Rajani was chaste and religious minded, a model housewife in the traditional Vedic sense, dedicated to caring for her husband and children. Ave observed his mother's simple and touching attempts to ensure by prayers, by vows, and even by rituals that he continued to live. Whenever he was to go out, even to play, his mother, after dressing him, would put a drop of saliva on her finger and touch it to his forehead. Ava never knew the significance of this act, but because she was his mother, he stood submissively like a dog with its master while she did it.
Like Gaur Mohan, Rajni treated Abhay as the pet child. But whereas her husband expressed his love through leniency and plans for his son's spiritual success, she expressed her through attempts to safeguard away from all danger, disease, and death. She once offered blood from her breast to one of the demigods with the supplication that Abhay be protected on all sides from danger. At Abhay's birth, she had made a vow to eat with her left hand until that day her son would notice and ask her why she was eating with the wrong hand. One day, when little Abhay actually asked, she immediately stopped. It had been just another prescription for his survival, for she thought that by the strength of her vow, he would continue to grow, at least until he asked her about the vow. Had he not asked, she would never again have eaten with her right hand, and according to her superstition, he would have gone on living, protected by her vow.
Wow, that's like mother. I hope everyone is following so far. We'll have reflections at the end. AJ, you can, if you want, you can. Everyone can write a note. I'm doing the same thing. If anything, to help myself to remind. AJ, your turn, please.
For his protection, she also put an iron bangle around his leg. His playmates asked him what it was, and Abe self-consciously went to his mother and demanded, "Open this bangle." When she said, "I will do it later," he began to cry. "No, now." Once Abe swallowed a watermelon seed, and his friends told him it would grow in his stomach into a watermelon. He ran to his mother, who assured him he didn't have to worry. She would say a mantra to protect him. Srila Prabhupada said, Mother Yashoda would chant mantras in the morning to protect Krishna from all dangers throughout the day. When Krishna killed some demons, she thought it was due to her chanting. My mother would do a similar thing with me.
One more.
His mother would often take him to the Ganges and personally bathe him. She also gave him a food supplement known as Horlicks. When he got dysentery, she cured it with hot puris and fried eggplant with salt, though sometimes when he was ill, Abe would show his obstinacy by refusing to take any medicine. But just as he was stubborn, his mother was determined, and she would forcibly administer medicine into his mouth, though sometimes it took 3 assistants to hold him down.
Thank you. Babita, please.
Prabhu.
Babita
Srila
is
Prabhupada, yes, Prabhu, I'm here. Srila Prabhupada said, I was very naughty when I was a boy. I would break anything. When I was angry, I would break the glass hookah pipes, which my father kept to offer to guests. Once, my mother was trying to bathe me, and I refused and knocked my head on the ground, and blood came out. They came running and said, What are you doing? You shall kill the child. Abhay was present when his mother observed the ceremony of Sadhahotra during the 7th and 9th months of her pregnancies. Freshly bathed, she would appear in new clothing along with her children and enjoy a feast of whatever foods she desired, while her husband gave goods in charity to the local brahmanas, who chanted mantras for the purification of the mother and the coming child. Abhay, sorry.
Yes.
Abhay was completely dependent on his mother. Sometimes she would put his shirt on backwards and he would simply accept it without mentioning it. Although he was sometimes stubborn, he felt dependent on the guidance and reassurance of his mother. When he had to go to the privy, he would jump up and down beside her, holding her sari and saying, Urine, mother, urine.
Yes. Who is stopping you? She would ask. Yes, you can go. Only then, with her permission, would he go. Sometimes, in the intimacy of dependence, his mother became his foil. When he lost a baby tooth and, on her advice, placed it under a pillow that night, the tooth vanished and some money appeared. Abai gave the money to his mother for safekeeping, but later, when in their constant association she opposed him, he demanded, I want my money back. I will go away from home. Now you give me my money back. When Rajini wanted her hair braided, she would regularly ask her daughters, but if Abai were present, he would insist on braiding it himself and would create such a disturbance that they would give in to him. Once he painted the bottoms of his feet red, imitating the custom of women who painted their feet on festive occasions. His mother tried to dissuade him, saying it was not for children, but he insisted, No, I must do it also. Yeah.
Abhay was unwilling to go to school. Why should I go? He thought. I will play all day. When his mother complained to Gaur Mohan, Abhay, sure that his father would be affectionate, said, No, I shall go tomorrow. All right, he will go tomorrow, said Gaur Mohan. That's all right. But the next morning, Abhay complained that he was sick and his father indulged him. Rajni became upset because the boy would not go to school, and she hired a man for 4 rupees to escort him there. The man, whose name was Damodara, would tie Abhay about the waist with a rope a customary treatment, take him to school and present him before his teacher. When Abhay would try to run away, Damodara would pick him up and carry him in his arms. After being taken a few times by force, Abhay began to go on his own. Abhay proved an attentive, well behaved student, though sometimes he was naughty. Once, when the teacher pulled his ear, Abhay threw a kerosene lantern to the floor, accidentally starting a fire. In those days, any common villager, even if illiterate, could recite from the Ramayana, Mahabharata, or Bhagavata. Especially in the villages, everyone would assemble in the evening to hear the scriptures. It was for this purpose that Abbay's family would sometimes go in the evening to his maternal uncle's house, about 10 miles away, where they would assemble and hear about the Lord's transcendental pastimes. They would return home discussing and remembering them and then go to bed and dream Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavata. After his afternoon rest and bath, Abhay would often go to a neighbor's house and look at the black and white pictures in Mahabharata. His grandmother asked him daily to read Mahabharata from a vernacular edition. Thus, by looking at the pictures and reading with his grandmother, Abhay imbibed Mahabharata.
Thank you. Is Nikunj Gopiamath there?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
In Abhai's childhood play, his younger sister, I can't see. In younger sister Bharatavani was often his assistant. Together, they would go see the Radha Govinda deities in the Mulik's temple. In their play, whenever they encountered obstacles, they would pray to God for help. Please, Krishna, help us fly like this kite. They could call as they ran along, trying to put their kite into flight. Abhai's toys included 2 guns, a wind-up car, a cow that jumped, a dog with a mechanism that from Dr. Bose, the family physician, who gave it to him when treating a minor wound on Abhai's side. Abhay sometimes liked to pretend that he was a doctor, and to his friend he would administer medicine, which was nothing more than dust. Abhay was enamored with the Radhayatra festivals of Lord Jagannath, held yearly in Calcutta. The biggest Calcutta Radhayatra was the Mulik's, with 3 separate carts bearing the deities of Jagannath, Baldev, and Subhadra. Beginning from Radha Govind temple, the carts would proceed down Harrison Road for a short distance and then return. The Muliks will distribute large quantities of Lord Jagannath's prasadam to the public on this day. Radhayatra was held in cities all over India, but the original gigantic Radhayatra attended each year where millions of pilgrims took place 300 miles south of Calcutta at Jagannath Puri. For centuries at Puri, 3 wooden carts 45 feet high have been towed by the crowds along the 2-mile parade route in commemoration of one of Lord Krishna's eternal pastimes. Abhay had heard how Lord Chaitanya himself 400 years before had danced and led ecstatic chanting of Hare Krishna at the Puri Radhayatra festival. Abhay would sometimes look at the railway timetable or ask about the fare to Vrindavan and Puri, thinking about how he would collect the money and go there.
Thank you so much.
Abhay wanted to have his cart to perform his own Radhayatra.
Vasanti?
Eventually, he turned to his father for help. Gaur Mohan agreed, but there were difficulties. When he took his son to several carpenter shops, he found that he could not afford to have a cart made. On their way home, Abhay began crying, and an old Bengali woman approached and asked him what the matter was. Gaur Mohan explained that the boy wanted a Radhayatra cart, but they couldn't afford to have one made. Oh, I have a cart, the woman said, and she invited Garmohan and Abai to her place and showed them the cart. It looked old, but it was still operable, and it was just the right size, about 3 feet high. Garmohan purchased it and helped to restore and decorate it. Father and son together constructed 16 supporting columns and placed a canopy on top, resembling as closely as possible the one slash the traditional wooden horse and drawn cart. Abai insisted that it must look authentic. Garmohan bought paints and Abai personally painted the cart, copying the Puri's originals. His enthusiasm was great, and he became an insistent organizer of various aspects of the festival. But when he tried making fireworks for the occasion from a book that gave illustrated descriptions of the process, Rajani intervened.
Thank you. Prasanthi, you please.
Abhay engaged his playmates in helping him, especially his sister Bhavatharani, and he became their natural leader. Responding to his entreaties, amused mothers in the neighborhood agreed to cook special preparations so that he could distribute the prasadam at his Radhayatra festival. Like the festival at Puri, Abhai's Radhayatra ran for 8 consecutive days. His family members gathered and the neighborhood children joined in a procession, pulling the cart, playing drums and kartals and chanting. Wearing a dhoti and no shirt in the heat of summer, Abhay led the children in chanting Hare Krishna and in singing the appropriate Bengali bhajna Ki Kara Rai Kamalini. What are you doing, Srimati Radharani? Please come out and see. They are stealing your dearmost treasure, Krishna, the black gem. If the young girl only knew, the young boy Krishna, treasure of her heart, is now forsaking her. Abhay copied whatever he had seen at adult uh, religious functions, including dressing the deities, offering the deities food, offering arati with a ghee lamp and incense, and making prostrated obeisances. From Harrison Road, the procession entered the circular road inside the courtyard of the Radha Govinda temple and stood a while before the deities. Seeing the fun, Gaur Mohan's friends approached him. Why haven't you invited us? You are holding a big ceremony and you don't invite us? What is this?
Prabhu, you want me to continue?
The Sridhari or Srikar?
Yes, Prabhu. They are just children playing, his father replied. Oh, children playing, the men joked. You are depriving us by saying that this is only for children. While Abhay was ecstatically absorbed in Rathayatra procession, Gaur Mohan spent money for 8 consecutive days, and Rajini cooked various dishes to offer, along with flowers to Lord Jagannath. Although everything Abhay did was imitation, his inspiration and steady drive for holding the festival was genuine. His spontaneous spirit sustained the 8-day children's festival, and each successive year brought a new festival, which Abhay would observe in the same way. When Abhay was about 6 years old, he asked his father for a deity of his own to worship. Since infancy, he had watched his father doing puja at home and had been regularly seeing the worship of Radha Govinda and thinking, when will I be able to worship Krishna like this? On Abhay's request, his father purchased a pair of little Radha Krishna deities and gave them to him. From then on, whenever Abhay ate, he would first offer to Radha and Krishna, and imitating his father and the priests of Radha Govinda, he would offer his deities a ghee lamp and put them to rest at night.
Gary?
Abhay and his sister Bhavatarini became dedicated worshippers of the little Radha Krishna deities, spending much of their time dressing and worshipping them and sometimes singing bhajans. Their brothers and sisters laughed, teasing Abhay and Bhavatarini by saying that because they were more interested in the deity than in their education, they would not live long. But Abhay replied that they didn't care. Once a neighbor asked Abhay's mother, "How old is your little son?" "He's 7," she said. As Abhay listened with interest, he had never heard anyone discuss his age before. But now he understood for the first time, "I'm 7." In addition to the education Abhay received at the kindergarten, to which he had at first been forcibly dragged, he also received private tutoring at home from his 5th year to his 8th. He learned to read Bengali and began learning Sanskrit. Then in 1904, when he was 8 years old, Abhay entered the nearby Mutilal Seal Free School on the corner of Harrison and Central Roads.
Rampur?
Classes were disciplined and formal. Each long bench wait, wait. Each long bench had held 4 boys who shared a common desk.
Can you hear me? That you have to start the previous paragraph. Matilal was a boy.
Oh, okay, sorry. Muttilal was a boys' school founded in 1842 by a wealthy Suvarnavanik Vaishnava. The building was stone, 2 stories, and surrounded by a stone wall. The teachers were Indian and the students were Bengalis from local Suvarnavalik families. Dressed in their dhotis and kurtas, the boys would leave their mothers and fathers in the morning and walk together in little groups, each boy carrying a few books and his tiffin. Inside the school compound, they would talk together and play uh, until the clanging bell called them to their classes. The boys would enter the building, skipping through the halls, running up and down the stairs, coming out of the wide front veranda on the second floor until their teachers gathered them all before their wooden desks and benches for lessons in math, science, history, geography, and their own Vaishnava religion and culture. Classes were disciplined and formal. Each long bench held 4 boys who shared a common desk with 4 inkwells. If a boy were naughty, his teacher would order him to stand up on the bench. A Bengali reader the boy studied was the well known folk tale of Bengal, a collection of traditional Bengali folk tales stories. A grandmother would tell local children tales of witches, ghosts, tantric spirits, talking animals, saintly brahmanas, or something wicked ones. Here of warriors, thieves, princesses, spiritual renunciation, and virtuous marriage.
I can do.
Abhay turned 10 the same year. The rails were laid for the electric.
No, you also skip.
In their daily walks to and from school, Abhay and his friends came to recognize, at least from their childish viewpoint, all the people who regularly appeared in the Calcutta streets. Their British superiors traveling about, usually in horse-drawn carriages. The hackney drivers, the bunghees who clean the streets with straw brooms, and even the local pickpockets and prostitutes who stood on the street corners. Abhay turned 10 the same year the rails were laid for the electric tram on Harrison Road. He watched the workers lay the tracks, and when he first saw the trolley's car rod touching the overhead wire, it amazed him. He daydreamed of getting a stick, touching the wire himself, and running along by electricity. Although electric power was new in Calcutta and not widespread, only the wealthy could afford it in their homes. Along with the electric tram came new electric street lights, carbon arc lamps replacing the old gas lights. Abhay and his friends used to go down the street looking on the ground for the old used carbon tips, which the maintenance man would leave behind. When Abhay saw his first gramophone box, he thought an electric man or a ghost was inside the box singing.
Abhay liked to ride his bicycle down the busy Calcutta streets. Although when the soccer club had been formed at school, he had requested the position of goalie so that he would not have to run. He was an avid cyclist. A favorite ride was to go south towards Dalhousie Square with its large fountains spraying water into the air. That was near Raj Bhavan, the Viceroy's mansion, which Abhay would glimpse through the gates. Riding further south, he would pass through the open arches of the Maidan, Calcutta's main public park, with its beautiful green flat land spanning out towards Chaurangi and the stately buildings and trees of the British Quarter. The park also had exciting places to cycle past: the racetrack, Fort William, the stadium, the Maidan bordered the Ganges, known locally as the Hooghly, and sometimes Abhay would cycle home along its shores. Here he saw numerous bathing ghatas with stone steps leading down into the Ganges and often with temples at the top of the steps. There was the burning ghata where bodies were cremated, and close to his home, a pontoon bridge that crossed the river into the city of Howrah. At age 12, though it made no deep impression on him, Abhay was initiated by a professional guru. The guru told him about his own master, a great yogi, who had once asked him, "What do you want to eat?" Abhay's family guru had replied, "Fresh pomegranates from Afghanistan." Shall I continue, Prabhu?
Yeah, one more.
Okay. All right, the yogi had replied, "Go into the next room." And there he had found a branch of pomegranates, ripe as if freshly taken from the tree. A yogi who came to see Abhay's father said that he had once sat down with his own master and touched him and had then been transported within moments to the city of Dwarka by yogic power.
Yeah.
Gaur Mohan did not have a high opinion of Bengal's growing number of so-called sadhus, the non-devotional impersonalist philosophers, the demigod worshippers, the ganja smokers, the beggars, but he was so charitable that he would invite the charlatans into his home. Every day Abhay saw many so-called sadhus as well as some who were genuine, coming to eat in his home as guests of his father, and from their words and activities, Abai became aware of many things, including the existence of yogic powers. At a circus, he and his father once saw a yogi tied up his hand and foot and put into a bag. The bag was sealed and put into a box, which was then locked and sealed. But still the man came out. Abai, however, did not give these things much importance compared with the devotional activities his father had taught him. He worshipped his worship of Radha Krishna and his observance of Radha Yatra. Hindus and Muslims lived peacefully together in Calcutta, and it was not unusual for them to attend one another's social and religious functions. They had their differences, but there had always been harmony. So when trouble started, Abai's family understood it to be due to political agitation by the British. Abai was about 13 years old when the first Hindu-Muslim riot broke out. He did not understand exactly what it was, but somehow he found himself in the middle of it.
Thank you. Swati Mataji.
Srila Prabhupada, all around our neighborhood and Harrison Road were Mohammedans. The Mulik house and our house were respectable. Otherwise, it was surrounded by what is called kasaba and basti. So the roti was there, and I had gone to play. I did not know that roti had taken.
It's not roti, it's riot.
Sorry, right. Sorry. A riot had taken place in Market Square. I was coming home, and one of my class friends said, "Do go to your house. That side is rioting now." We living in Mohabbetan quarters and fighting between the two parties was going on. But I thought maybe it was something like two gundas, hoodlums fighting. I had seen one gunda once stabbing another gunda, and I had seen pickpocketers. They were our neighbor men. So I thought it was like that. This is going on. But when I came to the crossing of Harrison Road and Holiday Street, I saw one shop being plundered. I was only a child, a boy. I thought, what is this happening? In the meantime, my family, my father and mother were at home, frightened, thinking the child has not come. They became so disturbed. They came out of the home expecting where from the class. Can you scroll down, Prabhuji? I can, yeah. Where from the child will come? Sorry, I had seen the icon.
You can finish.
So what could I do? When I saw the rioting, I began to run towards our house, and one Mohammedan, he wanted to kill me. He took his knife and actually ran after me, but I passed somehow or other. I was saved. So as I came running before our gate, my parents got back their life. So without speaking anything, I went to the bedroom, and it was in the winter. So without saying anything, I laid down, wrapped myself with a quilt. Then later I was rising from bed, questioning, is it ended? The riot has ended? When Abhay was 15, he was afflicted with beriberi, and his mother, who was also stricken, regularly had to rub a powder of calcium chloride on his legs to reduce the swelling. Abhay soon recovered, and his mother, who had never stopped any of her duties, also recovered. But only a year later, at the age of 46, his mother suddenly died. Her passing away was an abrupt lowering of the curtain, ending the scenes of his tender childhood. His mother's affectionate care, her prayers and mantras for his protection, her feeding and grooming him, her dutifully scolding him. Her passing affected his sisters even more than him. Though it certainly turned him more towards the affectionate care of his father, he was already 16. But now he was forced to grow up and prepare to enter on his own into worldly responsibilities. His father gave him solace. He instructed Abhay that there was nothing for which to lament. The soul is eternal, and everything happens by the will of Krishna. So he should have faith and depend on Krishna. Abhay listened and understood.
Very well. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I think it is one. Hope everybody relished. You can always let me know later any suggestions how we can improve. And we are also trying this the first chapter. Um, we'll go for a few minutes of quick reflections. It can be how you liked also, you can say, but the many things we covered. Anyone want to share something?
Yeah, I think right. This chapter just does a really good job of just kind of setting the scene in general, right? Of kind of the environment he was growing up in, the political strife, the religious strife, internal family stuff with his mother dying when he's young, and just kind of the things that, that at that age, the things that ultimately shape the rest of your life, and what's going on around you. So I think it's just kind of very telling in that sense of how his childhood then impacted everything else from there on.
Very, very nice. Thank you. I see that I remember this plague. I wrote it down. The plague was in the 1900, year 1900. The plague happened, and we heard about this. So it shows that how the devotees and people, irrespective of all these backgrounds, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Parsis, everyone gathered and chanted Hare Krishna, and the plague was subsided. Maybe we can try and deliver also. Yes, anyone else? Please feel free, don't be shy and don't hesitate. It's an opportunity for us to reflect ourselves and for the benefit of self and others.
We saw the prediction of the astrologer, while writing the horoscope for the child. So he was predicting the child will, when the child reaches the age of 70, he would cross the ocean, as well as he would open like 108 temples, 108 temples. So it was a clear, great prediction.
Yeah. Thank you. I wrote it down. Very nice. Anyone else? Everybody can tell one point because we have plenty of incidents, tons of incidents.
Prabhu, this is Babita.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I heard about Prabhupada first time, that he came after he completed his family responsibilities, then he came to America with nobody's support, on his own, on a ship, with almost no money, to a completely different place. I always thought, what was the force that pushed him? Like, why did he do that? Like, how can anybody even think of doing such a great feat? But today I realized it was because of his father. He has been his father's influence on him since he was a child. So I think since his childhood, since he's been seeing how his father, those values were imbibed in him. So that could be the reason why he shaped up like that.
Yes, thank you. That's a very nice point. Both mother and father from the Vaishnava background, and he got the blessings. That's right. Without the mercy of Vaishnavas, no one can do. And he got his father was always inclined towards how he wanted to shape his child. Thank you. Anyone else?
His father was serving many guests, like 4 to 5 used to come every day. And also he was praying every day from 10 to 1 o'clock. That is a good amount of service. As children, rather than teaching children, being an example is a great thing, and they automatically learn.
Yes. And he was primarily serving, inviting whoever the sadhus, saints, because you know that some are others so much inclined to get blessings from the sadhus, from the child. Thank you. Very nice. And anyone else?
That when Abhay wanted to celebrate Rath Yatra with his own chariot, so he didn't have one. So a woman came up and then she let him use her own chariot.
Yes, thank you. That's nice. Anyone else? Did you all remember the incident of typhoid, when Prabhupada got typhoid? The Dr. Boss suggested that he should have chicken soup, and his father hesitated, but he had no choice. He wanted to give. He had to protect his son. But finally he vomited. He didn't had anything from childhood. That's another incident. Yes. Anyone else?
I was going to say, also, I think his father, where you're talking about having the sadhus over to the house all the time, and how they started to kind of realize the religiosity, right, of a lot of those sadhus who were kind of playing the part, but not actually following the principles, right? They were a lot of drug use and just demigod worship and things like that.
His father didn't have much discrimination, looks like. But Prabhupada made it very clear because so this experience helps him also. Different kind of people. Did you all see that riot happened? But Prabhupada says that both Hindus, Muslims, and everybody is to live together peacefully. But it is a political agitation that riot took place when I was a child. There's another riot will also take place later, right? Before he comes, leaves everything. So, but there's one riot is mentioned, which happened when you were a small child. Anyone else? You can always unmute and share, no problem. We don't have to wait. We'll go for a couple of minutes.
Krishna Prabhu, we also read how Srila Prabhupada's parents, they imparted beautiful values to him since his childhood. They would in the evening walk 10 miles to his maternal uncle's place to hear Ramayana and Mahabharata. That was a culture in those days where people used to recite Ramayana and Mahabharata in the evening, and they would come back home and then go to sleep and dream about the pastimes of the Lord.
Yeah, that's a wonderful life, isn't it? Now we have YouTube. So many things here. That's very nice. Thank you. That's the Vedic culture. He did 8 days festival, chariot festival, almost 8 days. People thought it's a big festival done by his father. And everybody's asking, you didn't invite us. The father is to tell, no, I'm not doing it. It's my child. It's a children's program. And if you remember, for his mother cared so much. She took so many vows for the well-being of Prabhupada. Her mother wanted to him a barrister. Barrister means the lawyer, but father didn't wanted to send him to, British UK. So he shouldn't be influenced by those things. Many other things. He got the deity of Radha Krishna when he was a small child itself. Radha Krishna deity, he got chariot, and he's fond of kachori. That's why now also, when Prabhupada's appearance day happens, we serve kachori without fail, appearance and disappearance. Devotees make out of love. Anyone else want to say a couple of more? Nikunj Gupta Mataji or Pranath Prabhu or Saikiran Prabhu? Oh, they're not there. Okay. Swati Mataji, present anyone else more before we wind up?
Yeah, I saw Abhay Charan movie, Prabhuji. Compared to movie, in the book, it is more descriptive. Because in the movie, they didn't show more detail in the childhood. That's what I felt.
I'm glad some inspiration you give to all of us now. Right, they cannot have that long. Yeah, Avechar movie is not that big, small. Very nice. It's 8:41. And he said that he's a middle-class man, his father, but still they didn't have any issue with finances, maintaining family, feeding the guest. They never had a financial problem, even if he went to the school, Matilal school, right, when he was childhood, and his mother died when he was young. He says that at the age of 46, she died. Rajani died. I have a question, then we will end. What is his sister's name? Srila Prabhupada's sister's name. Oh, I got the answer here. But anyone else? Pavita, you get candy if you answer.
I thought Rajni was his name.
Avatarini Prabhu.
Samarth is taking the candy and Vasudev is taking the candy. Pavita, you have to give them.
Sure, Prabhu.
So I think everybody is going to get a candy when you answer the question. Ready? This is the inspiration tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Samarth Prabhu, I owe you a candy. Babita Mataji owe you a candy.
Hare Krishna. Have a good night.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wait.